Here are the answers. Unit 6, multiple choice quiz B. There were 4 questions that were problematic. Numbers 10, 6, 5, and 2. Question 10 gives you a bunch of information, and sometimes it's easier to process if you jump to the end. Which of the following best represents the meaning of the p-value? So you have a hypothesis test with this given information, and you're expected to interpret the p-value of 0.273. One way to summarize is to draw a diagram. So if I take the sample proportion, p hat, and put it on a plot with a p and a test statistic centered around 0.8, 0.84 is 1.1 standard deviations above average, which means if I go 1.1 standard deviations below average, I should be at 0.76, and this will help answer our question. Since the alternative is not equals to, this is a two-tailed test, which means the p-value is going to be the sum of these two tail areas. A, if the population proportion is 0.84, which it isn't. B, if the population proportion is 0.84, which it isn't. C, D, and E have a population proportion of 0.8, so those are all possible. The probability of observing a sample proportion within 0.04 of 0.8 is 0.273. That's close, but that would be the area between these two values, and that's not what we have, so this one is out. It's not within 0.04. If the population proportion is 0.8, the probability of observing a sample proportion of at least 0.04 greater than 0.80, that's only a one-tailed test, so the correct answer is E. If the population proportion is 0.80, the null hypothesis is the center of the sampling distribution. The probability of observing a sample proportion of at least 0.84 or at most 0.76, which is the two blue shaded areas, is 0.273. That's the correct answer, E. Second one, newspaper article claimed that 92% of the teens use social media. That looks like a P. To investigate the claim, polling organizations selected a random sample of 100 teens, and 96 teens in the sample indicated they use this social media, so 96 out of 100 would be your p-hat. Given the data, why is it not appropriate to use a one-sample z-test for a proportion to test the newspaper's claim? It looks like we're checking assumptions. First question is, was the random sample condition met? Yes, it was. We were told it's a random sample, so that one's out. Is the sample more than 10% of the population? Probably not. I think that there's more than 1,000 teens, so that condition was met. The observed number of teens in the sample do not use social media is less than 10, or the expected number of teens in the sample who do not use social media is less than 10. The better formula to check is NP greater than or equal to 10. We had 100 in our sample. The population proportion is 0.92, and that's certainly greater than or equal to 10, but 100 times 1 minus 0.92 is not going to be greater than 10. That number is going to be 8. And so the expected number of teens sample who do not use social media is less than 10. That's correct. D is the correct answer. Also, E is not correct because the population doesn't have to be approximately normal. As long as your sampling distribution is approximately normal using the NP tests, you don't have to have a normal population. That one's not correct. Question 5 says a one-sample z-test for a population proportion will be conducted. Which of the following condition checks that the sampling distribution of the sample proportion is approximately normal? So all three of these conditions are important, but only one of them is important for proving that the sampling distribution is approximately normal. If the sample size is selected at random, then we have good design, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the sampling distribution is approximately normal. NP greater than or equal to 10 and N1 minus P greater than or equal to 10 is how we prove that the sampling distribution is approximately normal. So that one's correct. And then 3, the sample size is less than or equal to 10% of the population size. That's also a requirement, but that's so that we have independent samples. And independent allows us to use probability rules, so that's not required for a normal sampling distribution. The correct answer is B, only Roman numeral 2. And again, all three of these are important for good overall processes, but only 2 represents the way of getting a sampling distribution for the sample proportion to be approximately normal. Finally, question 2 says a study report that 28% of middle school students in a certain state participate in community service activities, and a teacher believes that the rate is greater than 28%, which would be the correct hypothesis test. So again, summarizing what you have with symbols, if a study reports that 28% of middle school students, that sounds like a population proportion. And if a teacher selects a random sample and finds out that 32%, that's a sample proportion. How are we going to do a hypothesis test? Since there's only one group, we do not have two samples, and we don't have a difference in proportions, so we're down to C and D. Should this be a one sample z-test for a sample proportion or a one sample z-test for a population proportion? We run hypothesis tests and confidence intervals to make conclusions about population numbers, so the correct option, the correct title is D.